Hey, Chandler Bolt here, and in this video, I'm going to talk to you about how to retain top talent at your company. Now, if you're watching this video, you probably have some really great people and you want them to stay around for a while. Or maybe you're watching this video because you had great people and they all left. And you're like, how do I figure out, how do I keep great people? Maybe you've heard someone say, there's just no great people anymore. You just can't find good help. That pisses me off. And when people say that you can't find good help or they don't stay or whatever, it probably means you're not very good at recruiting, interviewing, and hiring. You need to watch my A-player hiring process video. That is the fundamental way that you can find great people. But secondly, you're probably just not that good at keeping them around. You need to give them a reason to stay, and that's what I'm going to be talking about in this video. Now first, when it comes to keeping great people, this starts before they start. This starts with expectation setting before day one. Now, a couple things that we look for is I want to make sure that I'm paying someone more than the position or the company that they were working for previously. So it needs to be a step up both in salary and in the type of position. So almost always, I want to make sure we're hiring someone who's in a tough spot or who's in a tough position, tough company, any of those things. We're moving to self-publishing school. This is going to be a step up. So maybe they've never worked from home before, maybe they've never had unlimited paid time off or all these other perks or benefits. But if they've already had that, they're probably more likely to be entitled and not appreciate that opportunity. So I want to make sure that they're making more money, that it's a better position, and that they're thankful and that they appreciate the opportunity that's in front of them. Now, I talk about this in my hiring video, but this is a big reason why I don't hire people in my industry. So in the internet marketing industry, it's because a lot of people, they're just entitled. They want to make too much. They don't appreciate the opportunity, and just none of those things work well at self-publishing school. And certainly none of those things are good for keeping talent long-term. Now, also when it comes to expectation setting, I want to under-promise and over-deliver. So I'll under-promise on, maybe the hours that you're going to work on. Say, hey, you're going to work super long hours. It's going to be very hard. You're going to make in this ballpark how much you're going to make, things like that. And I always try to come in above what we agreed upon. The worst thing that you can do is just try to get them to work for you, and you're just painting this grand picture, and it's like, this is gonna be awesome, you're gonna get promoted, you're gonna get this big fancy title, you're gonna make all this money, and then maybe they don't quite perform like you thought they were, so you can't give them those things. Or maybe just the business doesn't grow. For whatever reason, you can't meet those expectations. Well, now they're mad. And there's unmet expectations, so they're gonna leave. So I always try to set the bar lower, and I always hit above what I told them. So I'm under-promising and over-delivering. And then the last two things around expectation setting is make sure that their pie chart matches. So the pie chart of what they're looking for. I talk about this in another video on how to choose opportunities, but are they looking for growth? Are they just looking for finances? Are they looking for impact? Are they looking for stability? Are they looking for freedom? What is that pie chart of what they're optimizing for? What does that look like? And is that in alignment with your company and with the opportunity that you have? And speaking of alignment, this is the last thing, is you want to make sure that there are core values match. We hire according to the core values. So when it comes to expectation setting, if they're in alignment with those core values, and those core values are on all of our hiring material, they're on our landing pages, all those things. So people know that before they even come to work here. And we screen for that in the interview process so that we'll know if they're not a core values match. And if they're not a core values match, they're not going to last. So we need to make sure that expectation is set from the start. So that's expectation setting. Now, when it comes to keeping great talent, there's really two main things that matter. Number one is they need to be growing and developing. And number two is they need to feel value. Now, I'll break these two down. When it comes to training and developing your team, what are you doing to make them better? So we run a company book club. This is one of the fundamental things that we have that grows and develops the team. I've got a video on how to run a company book club. Definitely check that out if you're looking to run a book club in your company. But that trains and improves the employees. It develops them. We also have a training budget. So I think this is 1% of our revenue we account towards training. So we're always training and investing and helping our people grow. This is a huge core value, hard work and continuous improvement. Everyone's responsible for facilitating change. There's like a bunch of different core values in this, but we're always training up our people. We can only grow as a company as fast as our people can grow. So you need to have mechanisms in your company that train and develop, especially your top talent. Now, we also have tens of thousands of dollars worth of online courses and trainings and things like that that people get instant access to when they're onboarded onto the team. So they've got at their disposal all these courses that they can go through to improve, and we actually integrate that into the onboarding process. So even in the first month, the first 3 months, they're going through these courses that we've selected that are specific to their role in areas we want them to get good at or areas we want them to improve in. And you need to budget the time, because if you don't budget the time and say this is okay to do, no one will ever do it. So this is like just a company-wide culture shift, is you have to value and emphasize training. Otherwise, work will always fill up the container and you'll never spend time to do the training. So we say, hey, at least 5% of your time you need to spend on training. And we actually have internally a training leaderboard. So this is in our time tracking software called Harvest. We can see how much time everyone spent on training, and we have a leaderboard on who's spending the most time on training, and we post that weekly. So again, we're aligning this with our employees' goals and their motivations, which is to grow. Now, speaking of growth and speaking of aligning this with your employees' motivations, you need to tie in their personal goals with what they're doing at your company. Do you know their personal goals? Do you know where they're headed? Do you know what's important to them? You're only going to know if you ask, and then you need to embed that in the things that you're doing. Now, what we do, we embed that in our one-on-ones. We embed that in our evaluations. We embed that in all these different things so that we make sure that we're giving them opportunities, training, all those things internally that align with their bigger goals. And in doing so, they're going to stay for way longer because you're helping them achieve their goals. Now that's the growth piece. What about the people feeling valued piece? Now there's a great book, it's called Drive by Daniel Pink, and he kind of conquers this misconception that people just care about making a lot of money. and he actually did this ranking, this study, all these things, and in this hierarchy, that was actually not even, I think, in the top 5. It was one of the lower things on the list. Do they have a great manager, and does that manager and does the company value what they do? So I want to walk you through 6 ways that you can show your employees that they're valued. And these are kind of 6 small things that I do to go above and beyond and help people at Self-Publishing School recognize that they're valued and that we value the work that they do. Number 1, handcrafted coffee mugs. Now, this is something that we just started doing recently. This is amazing. So we actually have someone that creates these handcrafted coffee mugs that forms a word about that person and all these little images in this coffee mug that explains that person. So it's not cheap, it's maybe $75, $100. I think maybe it's slightly more than $100, but we do this now for every employee's birthday. So we have their manager and someone else on the team fill out a bunch of questions about them, and then the person that we have create these mugs, they create these mugs based on that. And it's all this handcrafted. It's a word. I've got one for myself. And often people will literally cry and they'll post in the team Slack and all that. It's like, this is the most meaningful gift that I've ever received in my entire life. And that's like the most common thing that we hear from people. And it's just such a thoughtful gift to let them know, hey, we recognize these little fun, quirky, funny things about you. We appreciate that. We appreciate you. And we value these things about you. And they think about it every time they drink coffee every morning out of that mug. So that's the first thing. Second thing, I appreciate you gifts. So this is this is from Keith Cunningham, and he talks about I appreciate you gifts. And the concept is that every now and then you give a surprise, unexpected gift to one of your employees, and you just say, hey, I appreciate you. And you don't say, this is because you did that thing, this is because you worked hard. You don't tie it to a thing that you did. It's just, I appreciate you. And so whether that's money, whether that's a gift, things like that, I do this all the time. Sometimes it'll be sending people on a little weekend getaway. Sometimes it'll be like I bought one of my employees an electric scooter because I knew they just moved to a new city and they wanted to scooter around, and it was something they were talking about a bunch. And so I bought them that scooter and said, hey, I appreciate you. And those are just the small things. Now, I'll give a disclaimer here. I do not believe in doing Christmas gifts at companies. I kind of learned this from my dad. So what happens here is when you have Christmas bonuses and Christmas gifts is it becomes an expectation. And you actually lose the meaning of the gift. I'm a big fan of giving gifts and sending things in the mail every other part of the year to all kinds of different people, not around Christmas. I remember my dad just talking to me about, hey, when you do Christmas bonuses, like there was this weird dichotomy that happened where his employees started expecting them. And then that's frustrating as a business owner. It's like, hey, wait, what? There's now this expectation that I'm gonna give a Christmas bonus. So I don't do Christmas gifts internally as a team. I don't do Christmas bonuses. Now, here's the reason why. Again, gifts are more impactful the rest of the year, but also we're saying that I'm gonna give you a bonus based on something something that's not in your control and that randomly happens. And this is an event versus we're a meritocracy. And I'm very public about this and we always talk about this. We're a meritocracy. You're going to get a bonus when you perform exceptionally well. So pay and bonuses is tied to performance, not random holidays. Now, that's why I give I appreciate you gifts, and that's how we engender long-term loyalty. Number 3 is random thank you cards. So there's nothing more meaningful than from a boss or a manager or things like that, just writing and sending random thank you cards. Back in 2016, I did the year of writing thank yous. So I actually wrote a thank you card every single day. So 365 thank you cards that year. And this is something that's kind of carried over. Now, admittedly, I don't do this as often as I like to, but I really like to send these thank you cards to employees just to let them know, hey, I appreciate you. I appreciate the work that you're doing. I appreciate who you are, all those things. So thank you cards. Number 4, get spousal and family buy-in. This is so important. So I lost a couple key employees early on, and when I traced it back and I started to think about this concept of spousal buy-in, what I realized, this is what always happens. If someone's gonna leave your company, inevitably, they have a conversation with their spouse or significant other. Now, do you or do you not want that person to be on your team? Because what can happen, and I've heard this from employees, is said, hey, I push people hard and I drive them to be the best version of themselves. Now, as a result of that, sometimes they're frustrated. They're short-term frustrated. And they're like, man, I don't need to deal with this. I don't want to deal with this. Like, this is too hard. And I've heard this story from one of my employees where he said, I was really frustrated. I was thinking about leaving the company. And then I went to my wife and she said,
so-and-so, that person's name, you can't leave.
She's like,
Chandler is the only person that challenges you. He's the only person that pushes you to grow. This company is going in the right direction. Like, you need to stay. This is good for you. Tough it out. Get back to work.
Now, guess what? I am very happy that person, like, I could have lost one of the top performers on my team. This is still, to this day, a top performer on my team. But because I had spousal buy-in, they were talked off the ledge. So what you want to think about is, what are the things that I can do and integrate with my employees to get spousal buy-in? So I'll oftentimes, this is the I appreciate you gift. I'll send key employees and their spouse on a weekend getaway. I'll say, hey, I'll pay for the Airbnb or I'll pay for the hotel. Have a great weekend. Or like, I'll sponsor the kids' sports team, or I'll send the kids to a water park, or like things like that, the whole family to a water park. So now all of a sudden it makes me feel good because I like to help and support other people. So like, that is fulfilling to me, but also it brings kind of this whole family and spousal buy-in. So, if they got to stay up late to work, if they got to work on the weekend, they're going to be more supportive, because there's nothing worse than an unsupportive spouse, and there's nothing worse than an unsupportive family. Because trust me, those conversations happen. And when those conversations happen, you want them to encourage them to stay at your company. Another thing that we do is weekly acknowledgement. So I found that, one thing I'm really good at is telling people how they can improve and where they need to improve. Now, this is not great when it comes to long-term loyalty and people feeling good about themselves and their worth in your company. Because the optimizer in me is always looking for like, hey, you can improve this, you can improve this, you can improve this. I do this to myself. I'm hypercritical of myself, my own performance. Well, guess what? That's demoralizing. If every time we talk, I'm saying you need to improve, you're like, okay, wow, am I doing anything right? And so what I integrated is these weekly acknowledgments. So this is part of our meeting structure, is I do acknowledgments. And I go around the horn and I say, hey, I'd like to acknowledge so-and-so for this thing that you did last week, so-and-so. And I give specific things that I'm grateful for and appreciative of for them. And now as a result, my key leaders and managers, they've rolled this out on their meetings as well. I've tried to embed as much as possible acknowledgments through daily huddles and other meetings so that I'm bringing to light things that they're doing well. This is something that I did not do enough, and quite frankly, I probably still don't do enough. But if you embed it daily or weekly into routines or into meetings, you're going to call those things to attention. Now, the last thing and the sixth thing, this is how we embed it kind of ongoing, is we have 2 channels in Slack. So Slack internally is what we use to communicate, and we have a wins channel and we have a positive feedback channel. Now, there's a lot of stuff that gets piped in there of customer surveys and things like that, but it creates this culture of feeling like we're always winning. And I'm always posting stuff, or I try to post stuff, and other people on the team can shout people out, because now their peers, their boss, their manager, their leader, if we're all saying, hey, I really appreciate you for doing X, Y, Z, you rock, thanks so much. So now I'm reinforcing positive behavior for everyone else on the team, and that individual feels valued. So I highly recommend, if you use Slack, create a wins channel, create a positive feedback channel. That's really helpful and just builds camaraderie, builds a feeling of winning. So that's 6 things that you can do to help people feel valued in your company. I'll give you one bonus, and this is just around compensation structure and overall benefits. So there's a couple things that we do there. And again, compensation isn't everything. And I've got a video on how to properly compensate your employees. How do you decide market-based wage, all that stuff. But we do extra benefits. So we now have healthcare, which is kind of a new benefit, which I know is pretty standard for most companies, but we have unlimited paid time off. We do bi-weekly house cleaning. So again, look back to spousal buy-in. If you quit that job and then your wife is like, oh no, I've got to now clean the house every 2 weeks, do not quit that job. So this is spousal buy-in, and also it's just a cool perk. All of our employees work from home, so every other week they get their house cleaned. And the company, aka me, pays for it. So this is something I love, and it's just a great perk, and I do this for myself. So I said, hey, why not have this for our employees? Now it's one less thing they have to worry about, so they're gonna be more productive at work. It's a great benefit, things like that. And then the last thing around compensation is we have a profit share. So if you're talking about aligning with their goals, and you remember I was saying I don't do Christmas gifts. This is a meritocracy. We give bonuses based on performance. Well, for full-time, non-commissioned roles, after a certain period of time, they're included in the profit share. So now all of a sudden they're very financially motivated, and this is as much as 20 and 30% pay bump quarterly sometimes, which is just wild. I mean, wild. It's this huge pay bump that we're aligning their goals with our goals, and as we become more profitable, they make more money. Now, I've got a video on how to set up a profit share in your company. This is something that I highly recommend if you want to keep people long-term, but that's kind of a bonus tip on how to help employees feel valued and retain talent long-term. So there you have it. That's how you retain top talent at your company. I hope that you found this helpful. And if you got great people, here's what you need to do to keep them. And if you keep losing people, here's what you need to do to make sure that you don't lose any more people in the future. So fix the hiring, fix the selection, fix the expectation setting, and then make sure that they're growing and make sure that they feel valued. What I want you to do right now is scroll below this video and comment and say, what's one thing that you do at your company to retain top talent or to help them know that they're valued and appreciated? Scroll below, comment, let me know what's that one thing. I'd love to learn from you guys, and maybe we'll integrate some of these things into Self-Publishing School. And as always, click the subscribe button. Seriously, like right now, click the subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video.